All right, what's up, everybody? Today, the question of the day is, what kind of emphasis do you place on core training? Don't answer it just yet. Go through the episode, understand the context of what I'm asking, and then answer it. Because I think core training is so underutilized, undervalued, and we need to start emphasizing it a lot more. Enjoy the show, everybody. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Plants and PRs podcast. My name is Tyler Egan. I'm a certified personal trainer, and today we're going to be talking about how to get that six-pack abs, how to get shredded. Now, but seriously, this is more about actual core training, actual core stabilization training, and how important it is, rather than actually worrying about a six-pack. I mean, look, having abs is cool and all, because let's be realistic, we all have them. We all have them. There's not one human being that I'm aware of that does not have actual abdominal muscles. They're all there for everybody. I think some people can have 8. I think some people can have 4, but we all have them, is what I'm saying. If you're overweight, if you're super skinny, if you're fat, it doesn't matter. You got them. You got abdominal muscles, and you need to understand how to use them properly. You need to understand what's going on. You need to understand that your core is way more than just the visible six-pack that everybody thinks it is. I don't like using the terminology ab training or ab workout, because your core is its own beast that it needs to be trained in a lot of dynamic ways so that you can use it properly and understand how you're supposed to move and understand how you're supposed to hold yourself upright throughout the day, throughout life, while you're sitting, while you're moving. But first, we need to understand a little bit about the spine. So the spine, I believe I looked it up, and it was like, I already forget. Wow, this happens fast. I think it was about like 17 inches long. I was about to say feet. Could you imagine having a 17-foot long spine inside your body somehow? It's about 17 inches, I guess, on average in each person. And it's made up of 33 different vertebrae. The vertebrae are just like bones. I'm not an expert on vertebrae, so I would definitely check that out yourself. But the vertebrae, there's 33 of them. There's 7 in your cervical spine, which is if you reach on the back of your neck and go a little bit lower towards your shoulder blades, you should feel like a bump. From my understanding, from there up to your head is your cervical spine. From there down to like the middle of your back, you'll feel like another bone, probably 6 inches to a foot away from your butt. That's your thoracic spine, your upper back. The lower part is your lumbar spine. And then underneath your lumbar spine connects into your pelvis. It's the sacrum. And then underneath that is a word that I cannot pronounce, and I'm not going to attempt to, which has 4 vertebrae. So there's 4 vertebrae in the word that I can't pronounce. There's 5 in the sacrum, 5 in the lumbar spine, 12 in the thoracic spine. Oh man, I'm actually going to do a whole episode on thoracic spine in general, in mobility. Thoracic spine mobility is probably holding you back from a lot of gains, baby. A lot of gains. Mobility is so important. So is stability, but that's what this episode's about. We'll talk about mobility another day. And then 7 vertebrae in your cervical spine. So these 33 vertebrae in our spine need to be protected. And the way we protect them is through proper core engagement. These muscles in our abdominal area, they protect that. Our spine is an amazing thing. It actually is. I highly recommend you look into the spine. It is incredible. The human body is absolutely fascinating. I wish I knew more. I wish I could explain it more thoroughly to you guys, but just understand that the spine is very important for human movement. It attaches everything to everything. It needs to be protected, especially when we're lifting weights. And proper core engagement is how you do it. So, like I said, these 33 vertebrae need to be protected through our core musculature, in which most of us do not know how to operate. Honestly, we don't even understand it. Like I said, everybody thinks that when you think ab training, you think that visible six pack. Maybe if you have some information on training and stuff like that, you understand there's obliques. Obliques are responsible for rotational movement in the midsection. There's the rectus abdominis, which is the visible six pack, and then there's also the transverse abdominis, which is underneath of that, and really works to stabilize your pelvis. There's also the diaphragm in there, which is responsible for proper breathing, and it really creates a lot of intra-abdominal pressure. So like if you're doing like a big lift, like a big bench, squat, deadlift, something like that, or one of the Olympic lifts, you're breathing properly and creating that intra-abdominal pressure through your diaphragm is super important, because it really stabilizes your midsection. That's why guys wear belts a lot of the time. The belt presses against your stomach when you breathe into it, creating even more intra-abdominal pressure to stabilize the area even more. That's what the belts are for. So if you see a guy doing a barbell curl with a weight belt on, it's a bit unnecessary. I get why they do it, but it's a bit unnecessary. If you have to use a belt to overcompensate for the fact that you can't use your core properly, that is a problem, my friends. None of these tools that you can use at the gym, they should never be a crutch to overcome something. Your body should be able to function properly. You should understand how to properly engage your core, and when you need to utilize more muscles than just those four I just named: the rectus abdominis, the obliques, specifically the internal obliques, the transverse abdominis. Oh yeah, and that's it. Because there are more that go into it. So there is the local stabilization system, which is everything I just mentioned: diaphragm, the internal obliques, the transverse abdominis, and the rectus abdominis. And then there is the global stabilization system, the global core system, which is responsible for the transfer of energy. Like for example, I'm sorry, let me take a step back. I was getting a bit ahead of myself there. The global core system is responsible for the transfer of energy through extremities. So the best example I like to use for this is like a push press. So you squat down and then you explode up, driving your hips forward, really driving knee extension, and pressing a barbell, dumbbells, whatever the case may be, over your head into shoulder extension to hit your shoulders a bit more. And what you're doing is, if you're stabilized properly, you have good core engagement, you're actually transferring the energy that you're generating from the ground and pushing it up through the weights. And you need the global system in order to do that. Muscles that are in the global system are the quadratus lumborum, which is a muscle I have struggled with tremendously. That muscle is actually responsible for lateral flexion. So if you are sitting up straight right now, let's just say you're at a desk, or even if you're standing up straight, and you go to reach down to, you put your hand on your hip, and then you go to slide your arm down your leg like you're going to touch your toes. That's considered lateral flexion. And the QL, in short, because the quadratus lumborum is a pain in the ass to say, the QL is responsible for that lateral flexion. So that's why doing things like suitcase carries is awesome to train that muscle, because it forces you to hold yourself upright, really grab the bejeebies out of that weight, and remain neutral in your spine and keep your core engaged and not give in to that weight trying to pull you down into lateral flexion. The next muscle is the psoas major, which is a hip flexor. So when you're sitting at a desk, if you sit down with your hips in a flexed position, which most of us do, that muscle is turned on. It's responsible for hip flexion. So bringing your torso closer to your quads or your legs. You have the external obliques, which are the visible obliques. The internal obliques are underneath of that. The internal obliques are also a part of the global system. The rectus abdominis is also a part of that. The glute medius, which is a hip stabilizing muscle. So your core muscles, especially with more dynamic movements, it's important to understand this, because your core muscles are also responsible for the stabilization of your hip complex. I mean, I did a whole episode. It was actually one of my most listened to episodes, or I guess I should say most downloaded episodes, called "Your Hips Don't Lie." It actually is probably one of my better episodes. But if you listen to that episode, there are a lot of muscles that contribute to hip movement. You got the quads, the hamstrings, the adductors, which are the muscles in your groin area. And then you have your abductors, abductors, which are on the outside, like your glute medius. And these help stabilize your pelvis. The other muscle, the last muscle, is your adductor complex, which there are 5 of these. They're all smaller muscles, and I'm not going to try to pronounce all of them. So your global system is the QL, the psoas major, the external obliques, the internal, the rectus abdominis, the glute medius, and the adductor complex. That's on top of the local system, which we already talked about, which is the internal obliques as well, transverse abdominis, some of your pelvic floor muscles, and your diaphragm. So these systems have to work together depending on the movement, but most of the time they need to be working together because you need the stabilization at your hips. You need the stabilization in your core to really stabilize your shoulders, your knees, all of that. If you lose stabilization in your midsection, the rest of your movement is going to break down. That's why this is so important. That's why I say that this is the reason you don't have a six-pack, because most of us don't even understand how to properly engage it, because there are so many muscles that go into this. One thing, I've been working with my younger brother more lately. He's just starting to get into fitness a little bit. He's more about just trying to, maintain health. He doesn't really care about getting shredded or getting huge. He just wants to be healthier. He wants to move better. He wants to feel better. He doesn't want back pain, knee pain, because he's had his fair share of knee issues. And I'm going over all these things with him, and I'm just like, one thing you need to understand is that human movement is way more complicated than people think. It is very complex. The way our muscles are supposed to move, you're not supposed to just flail around all day. To quote a good friend of mine, you're not supposed to flail around like a Magikarp. I don't know why he always goes to Magikarp. It's such a worthless Pokemon. I should do a whole episode on Pokemon. Who likes Pokemon here? Not that anybody can answer me, but if you like Pokemon, reach out. Because, man, I haven't followed Pokemon in a while. Anyway, the human movement is super complex, and people don't even understand how to use their bodies right. And look, we're not taught this. It's understandable. Nobody's taught this. I've had to teach myself this. It started with taking a personal training course, getting certified, and I'm just like, I can't just stop here. Human movement is fucking awesome. It is fucking awesome. And we don't understand it. And we need to. We really do need to. It's our bodies. We need to understand how to properly move them, how to properly maintain and take care of them. We really do. So you have the local system and then the global system, which work synergistically in certain movements. The local system isn't as dynamic, whereas the global system is. The global system, like I said, is used to transfer energy from one extremity to the next. So your lower extremities up to your upper extremities, or vice versa. Although I'm trying to think of a movement where you would do that. I guess like a burpee or something like that would be a good example. It's the first thing I could think of. But then we have the muscles that we need to actually move for the movement, the whole entire movement system. I definitely phrased that wrong, but I tell everybody there's so many muscles that go into proper core stabilization. And some of these muscles are things like your hamstrings and your quads and your lats. These muscles, they also attach to your spine and pelvis, which is why they're important. All of these muscles within each system provide dynamic stabilization. They also help with neuromuscular control, just kind of like motor control, being able to control the weight down or up depending on how you're moving. So if we're doing like a Romanian deadlift, as you hinge at your hips, you lower your butt back, sink your hips back, controlling that on the way back instead of just falling down. There's a drastic difference. That's why I with everybody I work with, I tell them, take your time. It's not about the quantity of the reps. It's not about the numbers on the bar. It's about the quality of the repetitions, because we need to feel these muscles activating. Not only do slow controlled movements help with neuromuscular control or motor control, but they also help with that mind-muscle connection, which I talk about a lot. The mind-muscle connection is huge. Like, I truly never even saw results until I started to feel the actual muscles moving. People may think it's weird when guys or girls stare at themselves in the mirror when they're doing an exercise, but sometimes looking at the muscle helps you visualize how it should be moving. It really does. It's insane to me. And also, like, taking videos of yourself doing these movements that you're unsure of and then breaking down it step by step is important. It really does help, guys. It goes a long way. The movement system, like I said, these muscles include all of the core muscles we talked about already. Everything in the midsection, everything underneath. So like the psoas major, that hip flexor, the QL, the glute medius, the adductors, all those. And then on top of that, we got the lats, your hip flexors, like all of them, not just the psoas major, your hamstrings, and also your quads. So these movement system muscles, the reason they're so important is because they provide dynamic stabilization in all planes of motion. So for those of you who may be unaware of, we have 360 degrees of range of motion that we have at our disposal. We have, if you just sit down, stand up, whatever you're doing, you just twist around, twist your torso, twist your legs, whatever you want to do, you have all of that range of motion to play with. Think about that. I mean, dogs don't have that. Cats. I mean, animals that walk on four legs don't have that. We have a tremendous amount of motion that we can utilize. And it allows us to do some incredible, incredible things. Have you guys ever watched Olympic weightlifters? Excuse me. Olympic weightlifters. Holy shit. If you want to talk about some athletes, those guys do incredible things with a barbell. Their bodies are explosive. They're like, oh man, it's insane to me what those guys do. We did some Olympic lifting when I played football in high school, so I know how to do some power cleans, and it's fun. It is fun, but man, does it tire you out. Those movements are no joke. If those athletes, if those Olympic lifters didn't have control over this movement system, the entire core musculature, all that stabilization, their body would break down mid-movement, and they would never land a single fucking one. Not a single one. The muscles in this area, like the lats, the hamstrings, quads, and the hip flexors, they help reduce force when you're performing a movement. So I'm trying to think of an example that is really easy to understand that I could explain. Okay, actually, a bench press is a good example. So if you're just benching and you press the weight up, you need to keep your lats engaged to really help stabilize your shoulders. So when you lower the weight down, your lats almost absorb all of that force, all of that energy, until you press the weight back up and really activate the chest. That's why leg drive on a bench press is so important, because it helps absorb all that energy that you're pressing down at that moment. It really helps stabilize you. So your lats in that particular instance are extremely, extremely important to help absorb that weight and really take the brunt of it off your chest. That's why understanding that muscles have antagonist muscles. So they have muscles that oppose what they do. So, for example, we have the chest, which is an internal rotator, and then we have the rotator cuff muscles, like your subscapularis, your infraspinatus, which are external rotators. Oh wait, actually, your subscapularis might be an internal rotator also. At any rate, you have like the teres minor, your rear delts, the infraspinatus. They are all external rotators. So there's muscles that counterbalance each other. So that's why it's super important that you work every single muscle, so that there's a balance in your body, so you're not too heavy one way or the other, because you can overactivate like your back muscles as well. Like the same thing can happen. So it's important to have that balance. It's important to understand that there are muscles that reduce force, like in this case with the lats. The same thing happens on a squat. If you're lowering down and you're getting into knee flexion where your knee is bent, the hamstrings in that instance help absorb that energy. That's why understanding that your core doesn't just work with the muscles in your midsection. It's important to understand that the lats, the hamstrings, the quads, the hip flexors also play a role when it comes to core stabilization. And those are just a couple examples of it. The other thing I want to talk about when it comes to why you don't have six-pack, and I'm sure most people probably thought I was going to go here in the beginning. I didn't want this exercise, this episode to be about this completely. But nutrition. Need I say more? I think if you're listening to this, you have a good understanding already, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Nutrition is vital, absolutely vital for a six-pack. If you really want one, look, I'm I like to look good. It makes me feel better. It gives me confidence. I don't know. I just like it. I like it. But not everybody gives a shit. I was having a conversation with somebody about it yesterday. You don't have to have a six pack. You don't have to be shredded. If you're just in it to, like I was talking about with my younger brother, he just wants to move better. He just wants to last a long time. He wants his joints and he wants everything to hold up over time. Makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, I wish more people would. Everybody associates the gym with a six pack and having to be shredded. Like, you can just go to the gym and be functional. Why can't we put more of an emphasis on functionality? Ugh, society. Fuck. But so my younger brother doesn't really care for that stuff, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Me, on the other hand, I want to look good. I put a lot of hard work into myself. I want to look good. So if you're one of those people, if you're like me and you want to have visible abs, nutrition, eating that real food, that good. You know what I mean? Like, put that bag of Doritos down right now. Come on, you know how I feel about Doritos. Put that shit down and go grab some broccoli. Just like a raw stalk of broccoli and just fucking dog it right in your mouth. Jam it in there. Never again with the Doritos, okay? No, but seriously, I mean, nutrition is important. Like, not only do we need to be eating quality, real food, because there's a lot of healthy, and I'm using quotations, I got the air quotes going on, a lot of healthy snacks or on-the-go things. Like, what you don't realize is they're just as bad most of the time. There's all kinds of salt and sugar and shit like that in them to help keep them on the shelf longer. So all these healthy snacks and whatever they're calling them these days are just stupid. Just eat some real food. I understand it takes more time. I understand cooking it takes a little bit more time. I understand going to buy groceries 2 or 3 times a week because you need to get fresh lettuce takes time. Like, I understand, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. For long term, it's so worth it. Not to mention, you can buy frozen vegetables. It's pretty awesome. They still taste relatively, it's not the same, but it's easier. It's more convenient. You can stock up. There's little hacks around these things, but nutrition is so important. You need to be in a calorie deficit. I recommend having a bit of a higher protein intake, maybe a little bit higher than normal if you're trying to cut some weight and maintain muscle mass. You're not going to maintain all of it. Not that I know of anyway. I haven't heard of any studies that have come out recently that show people can maintain all of their muscle and lose fat. You do lose a little bit of muscle because what the body actually does is when you deprive your body of carbohydrates, which is what we kind of, that's what most people do on a cut. They'll cut back on their carbs a lot more than if they're on a bulk or maintaining. When you cut back on your carbs, your body will use the protein or muscle in your body for energy. I think the process is called gluconeogenesis. And basically what it is it turns certain amino acids into sugars so your body can use it as energy. It's pretty fascinating. I'm telling you guys, if you have time and you want to learn, the human body is fucking amazing. I love it. I love learning more about it. It fascinates me. Like, I'm gonna learn. I want to learn more about the spine now. Like, when I was doing a little bit of research for this episode, just understanding that there's all these vertebrae in the spine is amazing to me. When someone like slips a disc, from my understanding, it's like one of those vertebrae comes out of place. And actually, another fun fact for you guys is a lot of these movements, like squats, deadlifts, and stuff like that, they compress your spine. So because you're in a barbell back squat case, you have the weight on your back, literally on your spine, compressing it down. We need to decompress that. We need to pull it apart. That's why yoga is so awesome. I really recommend yoga to people these days. Yoga is amazing. It has changed my life. It's helped me understand my spine, my body more. It's helped me take my spine through its full range of motion, and that's been awesome. It's almost like it's allowed me to explore my body in ways I never understood I could, like movements I never thought I could do. It's awesome. But like now I really want to learn more about the spine. The spine is like the end all be all. It is like our lifeline besides our heart. That's important. And the brain, that's important too. We got a lot of important parts. So last thing I just want to hit on, I know I kind of bounced all over the place with this episode, but it's important, this part. So I talked before about a physical therapist who I read one of his books. His name's Dr. Kelly Starrett. His Instagram and YouTube pages are the Ready State, I believe, and I really, really recommend you guys go check it out. He's got a lot of good information, and he explains it way better than me. But it's changed my life, and I'm reading one of his books right now, and he has the proper bracing sequence. So this book is called Becoming a Supple Leopard. I will I will put a link to the book in the show notes just in case anyone's interested. It's a bit of it's a thick ass book, and it's a bit. I think it was like $60. It's more like a textbook. I'm just a nerd like that. So if you start in a compromised position when it comes to proper core bracing, which a lot of us do just from gravity and shit, you're already you're setting yourself up for failure already. So this compromised position looks something like, your head's pushing forward a little bit. You have your shoulders rounded forward or internally rotated. Your rib cage is up and flared. So your core is not properly engaged. So what you do is you compensate by pushing your butt out and putting your lumbar spine, the lower back, into a really compromised position. It's overextended at that point. You have an anterior pelvic tilt. So like I said, your butt's pushing back and you have that little bit of lower back rounding, which puts a lot of stress on your low back. And then you have no torque in your feet. Now, what I mean by torque is you create stability by externally rotating at your feet and really kicking on those hip stabilization muscles like the glute medius. So in order to correct this, first things first is you got to screw your feet into the ground. This is a cue I use a lot when it comes to squatting or any kind of leg movement to really help drive into that glute medius, into those hip stabilization muscles, because a lot of them they're weak on a lot of us. So you start by screwing your feet into the ground. You don't want to physically turn your feet completely so that they're pointed outwards. You just want to drive into the big toe, little toe, and your heel, and think about screwing that foot into the ground. There, you want to squeeze your butt to neutralize your pelvis, and then you want to take a deep breath in. So you want to pull your belly button back, deep breath in into your belly to fill up the diaphragm. Balance your rib cage over your pelvis and get your belly tight as you exhale. So that's the one thing that I actually used to struggle with a lot. I had a lot of this down except for the rib cage part. I used to leave my rib cage flared up. So you want to pull your rib cage down into your belly button back and really neutralize that. From there, you want to extend your spine up, open up your chest, set your head and your shoulders in a neutral position where your head should be over your shoulders and your ears should almost be right directly over your shoulders. And then that is the more ideal position. You don't need to keep yourself fully flexed in this position. So like when you set your pelvis and you squeeze your glutes, you don't have to keep it fully set the entire time. You don't want to overactivate that muscle. You just want to squeeze it, get your pelvis in a neutral position, and then relax it. And make sure your lower back doesn't round. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. This was a way longer episode than I was anticipating, but this is actually a really good one. I think there's a lot of good information in here. I really hope this helps you guys, because honestly, if you really want a six-pack, yeah, your nutrition matters. It definitely matters. That's why I wanted to make it a point to say something. But understanding how to properly brace your core, understanding that there's a lot more muscles that go into this than just your visible six-pack is very important. It's very important. At the end of the day, this is your body. And I think it's important for us all to understand how to use it and function properly. So hope you guys took something from this. If you did, please leave a rate and review on iTunes. If you're on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. There should be a video posted every day that I do a podcast and some other content coming there. Hit the notification bell as well to get notified whenever I post a video, because I got a small channel. I got to imagine YouTube is not going to put me on your front page if you really want to listen. So thanks for checking out the show, guys, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching the entire video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, and stay tuned for more, because I'm going to start uploading more podcast episodes here. And yeah.